New South Wales Police has launched Operation Trident, a state-first policing model that fundamentally changes how law enforcement operates in metropolitan Sydney. Over 250 officers descended on Sydney's central, northwest and southwest regions in a coordinated 2-day blitz that will now run every 2 months. The operation targets domestic violence, youth gangs, drug dealers, bikie gangs and illicit tobacco suppliers. The message: overwhelming force, recurring deployment, no safe havens.
It was a surge capability in terms of numbers, and the results that you've all seen and we've all spoken about were as a result of that.
For years, New South Wales Police deployed surge operations in regional towns experiencing crime waves. The model worked in smaller populations where concentrated resources made immediate impact. Now that same tactic hits metropolitan Sydney. The scale reflects the challenge. This isn't extra patrols. This is mobilisation of specialist units normally reserved for specific high-priority operations across opposite ends of Sydney's socioeconomic spectrum, from Mount Druitt to Mosman. Operation Trident pools resources from across the force. The Dog Unit, Aviation Command, Water Police and Public Transport Command work alongside frontline officers from multiple police area commands. Intelligence drives every deployment. Before officers hit the streets, analysts compile target lists based on known offenders, ongoing investigations and emerging crime patterns. Every raid, every search, every compliance check is pre-planned and strategically coordinated. Detective Superintendent Guy McGee oversees the Northwest operations. His focus: violent repeat offenders who terrorise communities. We know who they are, the ones arming themselves with guns and knives, and we'll keep knocking on their doors. We're not giving them room to breathe. Police investigating vehicle thefts and fraud in Eastwood hit one property in coordinated stages. First contact: officers found Shane Egan, 48, in a garage with methamphetamine and heroin, 2 counts of supplying prohibited drug greater than 5 grams. Commercial dealing, not personal use. Minutes later, the regional enforcement squad smashed through a unit door at the same property. Dynamic entry secured 3 more arrests: Bo Wilcox, 24, for drug possession, Alec White, 29, for property and fraud, Mitchell Bell, 48, for dishonesty and weapons offences. 4 arrests, 1 location, multiple criminal networks dismantled simultaneously. At Smoky Tobacconist in Thornley, police and New South Wales health inspectors seized 30 cartons of illicit cigarettes, vapes and cannabis. Investigations ongoing. The illegal tobacco trade in Australia has exploded. High tobacco taxes create profit margins rivaling drug trafficking. Criminal networks, including outlaw motorcycle gangs, moved heavily into tobacco because penalties are lighter but profits comparable. The joint operation with New South Wales Health combines law enforcement powers with Health Regulation Authority. New South Wales Health can issue compliance orders, impose fines, and suspend licenses through administrative processes that don't require criminal convictions. This shuts down illegal operations, even when prosecutions prove difficult. Police searched the Mount Druitt home of an alleged Bandidos member subject to firearms and weapons prohibition orders. Court-imposed restrictions banning any weapon possession, typically imposed on people with violent histories or gang affiliations. Officers allegedly found zombie knives, an extendable baton, prescription pills and steroids. Someone preparing for violence and potentially dealing drugs within the bikie network. The Bandidos are one of Australia's most notorious outlaw motorcycle gangs, with a history of violent conflicts and involvement in drug trafficking and weapons dealing. Members under prohibition orders are highest priority targets because they represent demonstrated threats to public safety. At Mount Druitt, Westfield, officers searched a 15-year-old boy identified as a known gang member allegedly linked to the RFA street crew. RFA, ready for anything, is a street gang gaining notoriety in Western Sydney for violent incidents and social media posturing. Like similar youth gangs, RFA attracts young members through social media, creating identity around violence and defiance. This isn't a child who made a one-time mistake. This is someone law enforcement identified as an active gang member with concerning history. The search at a public shopping centre sends messages to the individual that police know who he is, to other gang members that their activities are monitored, and to the public that police address youth crime visibly. The challenge? A 15-year-old gang member is simultaneously a public safety threat and a child whose trajectory could still change. At Rooty Hill's Lone Pine Tavern, a police dog detected Thomas Spratt, 28, allegedly with methamphetamine and cash, charged with supplying and possessing drugs and dealing with proceeds of crime. The proceeds of crime charge is significant. Police believe the cash came from drug sales. This charge targets the financial infrastructure of drug dealing, not just physical possession. If convicted, Spratt faces asset forfeiture plus criminal penalties. Drug detection dogs screen dozens or hundreds of people quickly at pubs, shopping centres and transport hubs. The visible presence creates deterrence. Offenders leave drugs home rather than risk detection where operations are clearly occurring. Drugs seized paint a picture of Sydney's market: meth, heroin, cannabis and steroids. Meth remains the primary concern because of its association with violent behaviour and prevalence in property crime. Police arrested brothers Stephen McDougall, 25, and Aaron McDougall, 34, after a man was allegedly attacked with a wooden bar inside a unit. Aaron faced assault, occasioning actual bodily harm and resisting arrest. The assault charge requires medical evidence of injury beyond transient pain. The resisting charge suggests he didn't cooperate during arrest. Stephen allegedly spat on officers and was charged with assaulting police and common assault. Spitting is treated as assault due to disease transmission potential. It often results in immediate custody and harsh penalties because courts take dim views of violence against officers performing duties. Detective Superintendent Guy McGee doesn't sugarcoat reality. Mount Druitt has a reputation. It's always been a tough place to police, probably the busiest command in the country. For many Operation Trident officers, this was their first time working the backstreets of Bidwell and Shalvey, areas with high unemployment, public housing and socioeconomic disadvantage. Factors that correlate strongly with crime rates. McGee frames it as opportunity. When police from out of the area get the opportunity to come and experience those new crime challenges, I think any true cop would only be excited. That's why many of us joined. We love the challenge. New South Wales police positions surge deployments as professional development, not hardship postings. Officers get exposure to high-intensity policing and develop skills that translate back to their home commands. The reality? Mount Druitt requires this intensive policing precisely because of systemic issues law enforcement alone cannot solve. Poverty, inadequate mental health services, limited employment, generational disadvantage and family violence create conditions where crime flourishes. Operation Trident can arrest offenders and seize weapons. It cannot address root causes producing the next generation of offenders. Northwest Assistant Commissioner Gavin Wood describes Operation Trident as policing when the entire force pulls in one direction. There are no limits to where we go, what we do, or the capability we deploy. Extraordinary statement from Senior Command. No limits suggests operational considerations, not resources, determine how and where Operation Trident operates. Wood emphasises overwhelming positive community response. Everywhere we went on the weekend, business owners and community residents were coming out, acknowledging our presence and thanking us for what we do. This emphasis serves multiple purposes, legitimizes intensive policing, counters criticism about heavy-handed tactics, reinforces that Operation Trident protects law-abiding citizens rather than oppresses communities. However, the articles only include police perspectives. Business owners and residents in targeted areas aren't directly quoted. This absence is notable because perceptions of intensive policing often vary significantly between authorities and those being policed. Wood addresses critical concern whether surge operations compromise policing elsewhere. The response capability of each police area command will never be compromised for the sake of an operation. It was business as usual at the Southwest and Central Met area commands. Important assurance, deploying 250 plus officers necessarily draws them from somewhere. If response times increase or routine patrols decrease in other areas, Operation Trident success comes at the cost of reduced service elsewhere. Operation Trident casts a wide net across every level of criminal activity. High-risk domestic violence offenders face relentless bail and ADVO compliance checks because repeat offenders pose the greatest risk of escalation to homicide. Youth gangs are targeted in public spaces to disrupt networks and prevent recruitment, a significant concern across Western and Southwestern Sydney. Drug dealers from street-level possession to commercial supply operations face enforcement, with methamphetamine, heroin and cannabis remaining primary concerns. The massive illegal tobacco market funding organised crime receives major attention, evidenced by the seizure scale. Illegal firearms and weapons operations target prohibited persons to prevent armed violence, with particular emphasis on knives reflecting growing knife crime concerns. Warrant offenders who skipped bail or are evading justice get cleared from the streets. Compliance checks on child protection register. Sex offenders resulted in 35 fresh charges. Even business licensing receives scrutiny with 386 inspections ensuring regulatory compliance. Nothing escapes Operation Trident's scope. Can this level of resource deployment every 2 months actually be maintained long term? Will it diminish over time as competing priorities emerge? Does surge policing simply move crime to adjacent areas during operation periods? Or does sustained pressure actually reduce criminal activity? High arrest numbers look impressive, but what's the long-term impact on crime rates? Are prosecutions successful? What happens after the surge ends? Is deploying Aviation Command and Water Police for these operations the most efficient use of specialised resources? Operation Trident represents a fundamental shift in metropolitan policing strategy. The surge model previously reserved for regional crime waves now operates on recurring schedule in Sydney's suburbs. Every 2 months, this level of concentrated enforcement cycles through metro regions. The operation targets street-level crime and organised operations simultaneously. Gang members at shopping centres to sophisticated tobacco smuggling networks. Police deploy specialised resources alongside traditional enforcement, creating overwhelming presence in target areas. High visibility policing remains paramount to operating strategy. The numbers, arrests and visible show of force send clear message. Sydney's most dangerous streets are under persistent, coordinated scrutiny. Operation Trident will continue. The question isn't whether it continues. The question is whether recurring surge operations reduce crime long term or simply move it around. New South Wales Police has committed to the model. The results will unfold every 2 months. Only time will tell if this new model of policing will be effective. Let me know what you think of Operation Trident down below in the comments. As always, if you want more stories from the Australian underworld, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It really helps me out and helps the channel grow. Till next time, take care.